Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Um, Here we are at a new event in the webinar series CINCH Talks for Teachers. Today is a special day, not just because Christmas is coming. Today is a special day because we have the opportunity to reflect on our teaching activities from a different perspective. This webinar lets us have a break and discover something we perhaps already know, but we are not able to apply correctly. I am delighted to introduce to you two colleagues who are accompanying us in this pause for reflection, Valeria Baudo and Paola Corti. Paola and Valeria are two, please. Valeria and Paola are two meted colleagues with whom I had the pleasure of sharing many work activities. Valeria and Paola are also two dear friends with whom, over the years, I have been able to discuss about work, family, politics, and everything in life. What else can I say? All that's left is to listen and participate in this exciting webinar. I will monitor the chat, so you can write some questions, some ideas, some sentence. But if you have a question, you can use the raise your hand function directly. Over to you, Paola and Valeria.
Thanks to everyone for being here today. Well, what we want to speak today about is a very short talk, and in every moment, please interrupt us and ask things, because this topic is a sensitive one, so there is no written rules, there are no right or wrong answer. It's just more a conversation, really talk about this issue. The idea is to introduce you the FOSFOM project, that is the project where everything begins, and ask you your opinion and idea about the importance of the creation of gender balanced educational content also in your field. And we will introduce you some practical tools we have developed within the project, and the idea is to give you some hints and practical action as takeaway for today, and in order to give you some instruments and some ideas if you are interested in developing a gender balance perspective in the creation of your educational content, so you can start from today or tomorrow. And we leave the floor to question and answer. We have prepared the presentation just to for the sake of clarity, but please interrupt and we can switch to the conversation mode in every moment. This is the project. You have the web link. FOSFOM project is an Erasmus Plus project which aims to develop, to attract more young girls and women to the STEM careers, thanks to the creation of MOOCs and educational content in general, free of gender assumptions, gender stereotypes, and unconscious bias on gender ability. There is a huge literature, and I'm happy to see a lot of women, of science women today in this webinar, because it's not so common in STEM field to have a balance between the two gender, the men and the women. And this project, the final aim is to try to mitigate the gender gap in STEM field through the creation of this educational content. We are almost at the end, so we can provide you some and share with you some of the results. Just to give you an idea, this is the partnership. You can see we are coming from Italy, from Portugal, from France, from Spain, and from Sweden. And the last two now names, Collegio de Amor de Deus is Benedetto Castelli, are high school, because we really believe that entering at the high school level, it's so important to give an orientation and to give a guide to young women to pursue a career in STEM. I want to share this slide and the partnership also because you know, this is a real sensitive topic, and speaking about diversity and gender balance are issues related to the socio-cultural context. You can see we are, it's a European funded project, so we are all European and basically from the south of Europe. I'm sure that in different countries and also in the different parts of Europe, the things we are speaking about are perceived in a different way. This is one of the alerts we say about this project, that we are all people coming from Europe around the table. So if you want to add your perspective, because we have a different perspective related to our country and socio-cultural context, more than welcome. Just to give you an idea of the project, and then we will skip this part. The first one project aims to started from analysis of the gender balance in MOOCs, the creation, then move to a creation of the toolkit, that is a practical checklist for people involved in, we say always MOOC because the project is devoted to MOOC practitioner, but we have designed it in terms of scalability and adaptability to be used for useful for all the content creator and the teachers. And we have created, we are in the middle of the creation of other two MOOCs. One MOOC is already available, and is the one we will speak more in detail, and it's focused about the creation of gender balanced content, educational content. The other two are more for young women in order to attract them, because we try to design them without gender stereotypes. But now, the idea is to ask your opinion. We have tried, we have thought to create a book club, so you can, if you want, you can join it. It's already open, but if you are more comfortable, you can open your microphone. And I'm sure that you have an idea about this topic. Do you think it's important, and why it's important to create? I think you think it's important because you are here now, and we want to know why, in your personal experience, in your opinion, reflecting about your daily and life and job life, it's important to create gender balanced educational content. So this maybe it's easier to see. We have 2, 4, 6, 7. We wait for one more, or we can skip. We can try start commenting them to welcome all people. So, why it's important to create gender balanced educational content? To be inclusive, whatever it means. So inclusion, it's a very wide topic, to welcome all people, because we all believe that we all belong to this place. I have no idea, and I hope you can have an idea at the end of this webinar. We need a good range for diversity, inclusion, welcome our idea behind this perspective. To support all perspectives are available in the STEM working environment, to embrace another, all participants in developing their skills, a lot of different perspectives and points of view, because we believe that diversity has an added value, to encourage all to consider careers, because if we lose the women, we lose half of the world population. I have no idea. Equality, to welcome all people. Okay, we can stop, or if someone wants to comment. Paola, do you want to say something? I've seen your mouth. Oh.
Not yet.
Okay.
Let's wait for our participants to talk, maybe later on, if they don't want to do it now.
First, thanks for sharing. And I leave the floor to Paola, and we will start working more directly on the toolkit and the practical part of this project.
Okay, thank you, Valeria. So let's dive a little bit more in depth into what we worked on. As a general approach, please consider that we focused mostly on on the STEM field, because this is our objective in FOST1 project. But what we tried to do when designing and developing the toolkit was to provide, as far as possible, something that could be adapted. Okay, so even if we started from the STEM field, which is I think mainly interesting for you also, given the content of your project, we tried to create a toolkit which could be adapted easily, or at least quite easily, also to other kind of subjects. So how may your way of teaching help to lower the gender imbalance in STEM subject, but mainly also in other kind of subjects? So what we provide here are 3 very simple and basic rules. Using educational content to propose STEM subjects free of stereotyping assumptions on gender abilities, which seems to be very easy when you think about it superficially. But then when you are dealing with content, you really have to wear a different pair of glasses to really see what's happening, okay? And we will look into it in the next slides. And then you might want to attract girls and young women to science and technology through accessible online content, role models interviews, and relevant real-world situations. We strongly tried our best to stick to reality. Whichever example we provided, whichever focus we proposed to our users and also to the participants of the MOOC that we already created, we strongly try to provide role models that come from reality, from our own institution or from partner institutions sometimes, because we think that nobody better than colleagues can show what the gender balance means, also in the STEM field. And then another suggestion is to apply good practices in videos and online course design that can give the sense of belonging that female students seek when enter the STEM areas. Sometimes female students told us, also from other experiences, and Valeria had more than one in relation to gender balance, they really told us that they didn't feel welcome in the field at the beginning of their careers. And even when they had to choose their STEM career or to choose their STEM university path, they didn't feel it was something that socially, let's say, could belong to them since the very beginning. So this is something that is still there to be faced, and we need to address this, whichever educational path we create. Next slide, please. So when we designed this toolkit, which is the target users we had in our mind? Who is this toolkit designed for? Any person or institution that wants to develop educational content with a gender balance narrative, or check if its educational content respect the gender balance. If you think at this, it's very broad, and you will see it in the toolkit also. It's very broad because, as I said, we tried our best, at least, not to focus too much on STEM in the content, and when we did, anyone can easily change STEM with the different subject they are interested in. And the other step we took is to release this toolkit with a CC BY license, which is the the broadest Creative Commons license. I don't know if you are familiar with the Creative Commons licenses. They are required by the European Commission in order for us to allow anyone who is willing to reuse the results of our European projects, and especially Erasmus Plus projects, to do so, being enabled to reuse them, but also to adapt them. And this is the broadest license, which allows anyone to reuse and change the toolkit as far as needed in order to adapt it to the needs of their course, their institution, their nation, their laws, and you can enlarge the boundaries of the adaptation as far as you want, okay? So this is a very conscious choice we did. We wanted people to be able to be enabled, but through our license, to do whichever change they need and they feel comfortable with in order to make the toolkit as consistent as possible with their scenario. And please consider also that we are also aware that our own scenarios changes with every single project. Look at your project, for example. It might be that within your partnership, you are all happy with the broadest approach toward the gender balance, or it might also be that one of your institutions has restrictions according to any of the items in the toolkit, and you are not in control of them, but they limit the whole partnership somehow, you know, because this is reality, this is what happens. And that's what we tried to address thinking about the toolkit. So in this short link, you can go directly to our toolkit, to our checklist, and have a look at it if you want. And Valeria, if you can go back to the slides, please, I can easily go on and talk to the next one, please. Next
Paola.
one. Yes.
Are you, sorry, which one? Paola, this one?
Yeah, but if you want, we can dive into the checklist now,
Okay.
the version that
Sorry.
one of our partners...
I think I have some problem still with my connection.
No worries. Can you please enlarge it as far as possible so that we can talk through it? Thank you. No, it's okay. It's okay. I think that people can either go directly to the link if you can paste it into the chat, or we can look at it through this through the shared screen. Please consider that this version of the checklist is the last one, and it's likely that we will come up with a new one by the end of the project. The project will end in August 2022, but this is not the first release of the checklist. We already worked through it more than once, because this version is, as you can see, is a Google Doc, and everyone is welcome to comment and to make suggestions to ameliorate it. We already went through more than one process of absorbing suggestions from users. And the purpose of this document, as we said, is to provide guidance in order to create contents that are multimedia content, okay? But of course, if you need to create just a text, or you are choosing just an image, or you are willing to create or design a video for any kind of content you have in your mind, and it's an educational content, in this checklist you can find maybe some suggestion that can help you go through the design of this content, taking gender balance into account. So you see, this is a very simple table. The document is organized in two different tables, one devoted to content expert and the other one devoted to visual designers, okay? If you are an instructional designer on the other side, you might want to have a look at both, okay? Because they try to address different issues. Let's start with the first one. So the content expert table tries to provide suggestions in different categories. The first one is general, and then through questions that you might want to ask yourself, support you in exploring some basic gender balance issues. Of course, you have options because your answer might be yes or no, and it's not up to us to judge anything. So the aim of this tool is to be, first of all, not judgmental, because we don't know the situation of each institution. We don't know the situation that is specific for each scenario, each context, each project. For example, it might be that in case you have different content experts for your educational content, you just have male experts. Is this up to you to, I mean, can you involve women? If yes, please go ahead. But what if you just have male experts in that specific field or in that specific project? Well, you can't do anything there, right? It's your reality. It's the reality of that specific project. So you can just go ahead and be aware that this is not in your control. So you can mitigate the male only content expert presence in the content that you are going to develop through other strategies that belong to other categories or other strategies that you might want to implement. For example, go ahead and find female researchers who provided contributions to the field and quote them in your content, or you can refer to examples that show female experts in the field working on the same topic, okay? Or you can choose images and iconographies that refer to female in the field. So each item of those two tables that you are very welcome to explore are always presented as questions, because you might want to ask those questions to yourself in every new educational project. And even if your answer is for many of them that this issue is not under your control, you can always play with the others, okay? So this is the strategy we applied. It's very simple. No judgment, just an analysis of your reality and some strategies or suggestions about what to do when you have the power to do something in relation to gender balance, so that your final educational content might be better than it would have been if you didn't think about it properly, okay? And this is something that happens to us on a daily basis. Just to provide you an example, I'm working on this project together with Valeria and all our partners since 2019. If you ask Valeria how many times she had to correct my storyboards for new MOOC videos or contents, when I didn't focus enough on gender balance issues, and how many times she had suggestions for me to ameliorate my contents in order to be more welcoming to all people, well, you would laugh at me, okay? Because it's like this, it happens when you focus on a subject, on a content, and also when you are used to use language in a not very gender balanced way, because it's more common, is what you find in literature, is what you find when you look at something specific. Well, that's what happens, that you reuse not so welcoming expressions, not even noticing. So these lenses that this toolkit is willing to help us wear are helpful also if you care about gender balance, because sometimes you are fast, you have to rush into deadlines, and that's what happens, okay? If you have any question about the toolkit itself, please go ahead and we can keep it on the screen. Otherwise, we can progress, Valeria, maybe, and we can go ahead with the next content.
Okay, thank you, Paola. If there is any question, please interrupt me. And as Paola very well introduced, this is not just another checklist boring. It's intended to be a practical tool to help you to develop and to raise awareness about this issue. And we have focused on some elements to be taken into account. And the elements are the content you are speaking about and how you present it in form of storytelling. And another key aspect is the language. Maybe some people with Italian languages or languages that use universal masculine are aware of that, and we will see that not English is not so totally safe in this respect. And another key aspect is the use of images and graphics, because in daily life sometimes you can see that the visual representation of women has a lot of problems. So the idea here is to have a very short look of some of the items of the checklist and give you an idea about what we used in the MOOC we have created to illustrate and to give you suggestions to use the checklist in your daily life and your daily work, and give you some, when possible, some key resources that we think are useful. So a takeaway for today, if you want to start with a new perspective in creation of educational content. So the first one is the one that already Paola introduced a little bit: if women and men are equally represented, and the type of balance. Examples. When you think about your topic, maybe some of the teachers we have spoken with told us that, well, I'm a mathematician, I'm speaking about numbers, I don't need to be careful in using gender balance. Well, so and so, because if it's true that the numbers are neutral, the explanation of numbers, the examples we give are social constructed, and they reflect our unconscious bias. So an easy example, an easy and powerful way to make students, women students, girls more included, is to balance examples which empower both men and women. And another thing it's important to stress, for instance, we have noticed that during our researches and speaking with your colleagues around Europe, is that the reference list you provide, the bibliography, is a useful tool, and you need to put the best paper there. Okay, we agree all of that, but have you ever tried to look at it from a gender balance perspective? Are you putting just a paper of males, or are you trying to stress also the contribution of female experts? And another aspect important is that every time you stress that, for instance, a mathematician is a female, you are stressing that it's quite something uncommon. It's important to stress something once, maybe, that is a female, but it's important in trying to balance, because not providing irrelevant information about gender stress the fact cause the opposite effect. So it's something so strange that we need to stress it, but it's not strange, because we don't have biological differences to be mathematician. How we can do that? For instance, in the history of science, you came from a field where there is one of the most famous examples about a scientist, a female scientist, that is Marie Curie. But the history of science is full of scientists, female scientists, who play a crucial role, but have not been so recognized. So the idea, this is a screenshot from our MOOC, is to include in the narrative of the history of your subject, not just the best people, but also to stress the role of female in the field. Paola, do you want to say something? Oh, no. Okay, sorry. Storytelling is another aspect. It's not just including one or excluding some other, but the storytelling is the way you teach your subject. Can you, and one of the questions can be, can you include in your educational content design an interview, a story, a biography of a woman who can be inspirational? So stressing that there are people who already did this job, female people of success, is a very useful tool, easy way of putting in evidence this aspect. And a more broad aspect is one you mentioned before in the short activity we proposed, that is diversity. We in this MOOC and in this project we just focus on the gender balance, and from a very let me say limited perspective, because we focus on male and female, but we know that male and female are not representative of the whole humanity. We are not focusing on LGBTQI plus issues. This is one of the limits of our project, and we are aware of that. Maybe the next one will be about that. And in every educational content, to welcome everyone, is important to welcome to include the diversity as much as we can. This is a screenshot from the MOOC, and it includes two examples used from teachers in Spain, here in Italy, in their educational content. Just including a CEO of a successful entrepreneur, or a CEO of or a scientist, can be a really effective strategy to make women welcome. And if you have a problem in there is a problem in journalism. Sometimes the journalist asks the expert, and there are panels where speaking about women issues composed by only male, and it's quite funny. And if you ask the journalist, they say, oh, there are no experts in the field. So the answer is, well, there are always women in the field, maybe less, and we have been some of these repositories have been created to find experts in the field, especially in a field of male representative. This is some examples you can find in the MOOC finally, but you can have there, for instance, interview her, answer to this question. I am a journalist, I did not find an expert, so a female expert, so I decided to interview a male expert. So you have a database that can offer you a resource. About the language is a very huge topic, because there are English is quite neutral, because there is no declination different for feminine and masculine. But in languages such as Italian, there is the universal masculine. It means that referring to the whole public, you use universal masculine. And we are now in the process of revision of some of the content of Fostum from translated in Italian from a gender balance perspective. I must admit, it's a very complicated way, also because the translation that came automatically from Google, I don't know if you have ever thought about it, but offer you a translation that is more coherent with for instance, in Italian, the universal masculine. So it's not an easy task. And when you are speaking, first thing to reflect is, are you using a language like Italian, Spanish, French, or so on, that is not gender neutral, or are you using using it. If you are using a language that is not gender neutral, try to avoid as much as you can the universal masculine, although it's not easy because you need, for instance, to rephrase all the phrases, and avoid terms that may be belittling to one gender, and use as much as you can gender neutral pronoun. And reflecting about English is quite safe, but not so much. For instance, mankind can be substituted by humanity, manpower by workforce, and these are things that you normally don't think about it. You use it because it's more common, and when we speak in English we have a lot of problems generally, so we are not so focused on the gender balance, but it's useful to focus on that. It's I provide you the guidelines created by the United Nations and the use of gender neutral language in the European Parliament that can give you suggestions and tips, and they're very practical and easy to use. And if you want to revise also the language you are using in the production of your educational content. And finally, there is another topic about the images and graphics you are using. It's important to use it, all the graphic elements, in order to be gender balanced and avoid to represent women in a subordinate perspective. The boss is a male, the secretary is a woman, the doctor is a male, the nurse is a woman. Well, not all the women love pink. I hate pink, and I want not to be represented as a pink woman wearing a skirt and so on. So try, when you create a graphic or you use it and reusing an image, to look at it also from this perspective. Let me tell you a very short story. We are going to produce in the Foston project also a MOOC about the ethic of machine learning. And this MOOC has been produced by our partner in Portugal, and the partnership, the faculty of the MOOC is composed by a male and a female. And the man asked for an example about football and decided to use this image, and a baby, and decided to use this image. These are images coming from a stock library. Then colleague, our colleague Anna, asked him to change it. Instead of football, that is more male-oriented, to use basketball, and instead of a baby that is clearly a boy, use a more neutral image of a baby. Well done, and Anna was really satisfied, and since there are no written rules, and there is, it's more a matter of your sensitivity. We have discussed among the partnership. Anna was totally satisfied with this image of basketball, and Paola too. I was not satisfied at all with this image because I don't know, it seems to me too stereotyped, like women not really playing football, but taking a photo to show that they are good at playing football. And I think it does not reflect the reality, but it's still on the MOOC, and I think it will be there because it's just my opinion, it's just my sensitivity. And just to tell you that special, Paola, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make a joke about this. Can you imagine the two of us working together with, we are two strong-minded women with different opinions on the same issues, and this happens all the time, but actually I enjoy it largely because that's how we can progress in looking at the same contents with different perspectives, and being in disagreement, even if we both care so much about gender balance, is really helpful for us when we have to talk and then negotiate with our content experts, because that's what helps us, knowing that there will always be a moment in which we have to step back and allow the content expert to make their choices, and we will be in charge of, let's say, compensating with the other tools that we have at our disposal. So it's a very interesting exercise, and it's also very fun for us, just to let you know that.
Well, I think that the problem I have with this specific image is that it comes from a stock library. A stock library photo represent generally the women as actors, actresses, and so on. And we did an excellent job thanks to one of our colleague Giorgio. He was very sensitive. He's still, but he does not work unfortunately with us anymore. Is very sensitive about this topic of the representation in gender balanced way, and he found an excellent set of repositories free for you to use, where you can find not stereotyped images of women. I really invite you to explore it and to use it in your next maybe presentation if you want to give a different perspective. And finally, and coming to the conclusion, because I hope you have questions, we have discussed and we have created a MOOC to discuss this issue, not only the checklist, but also the problems surrounding it, the inclusion of women in STEM field, how to lower the gender gap, and so on. And this MOOC is open, and it's in English. It's in our Polimi platform, pocpolimi.it, and I really invite you to explore it, just to skim it and to take some of the suggestions. This course aims just to raise awareness. It's just a question of raise awareness, not giving rules. It's not judging everyone, as Paola stressed before. It's just to help you to wear your gender balance glasses and to find a different perspective in the production of educational content, and maybe a different perspective in the way you teach and maybe you learn. We will focus on content storytelling, the use of a gender-aware language, and the gender-aware use of image and visual materials in a more deep way than we do so far. So the idea is to give you just a practical tool that can help you in your daily life. So, these are the idea behind the project, and that the educational content designed in a different way, in a gender conscious perspective, can really help in creating a friendly environment for women in STEM. It's important to create it, and we have offered this toolkit and the MOOC if you want to try to embrace this perspective. This is the link to our project if you want to know more.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you, Paola. Really, thank you very much. I am very, very happy you could have this talk with us today. I think it is a good idea to leave the floor now to everyone who wants to share an experience, or to put a question, or to say something. We have read something in the chat. Bruce is now away because he had another meeting, so is not here to put a question. At the beginning of the meeting, he wrote something about the law, so some formal rule in the UK to consider gender and sex. I don't know if you have read, but he is not here to add something. So I leave the floor. if one want can open the microphone and talk.
We have Marco who is raising his hands.
Yeah, hello, thank you for nice presentation. So I'm wondering just maybe it's provocative question, but if you would like to increase number of women in STEM, why would you then generate gender neutral content? Would you maybe this go in other way that it will be more likely for women's?
Well, this is a very interesting, provocative question, so thank you. Valeria, if you don't mind, I would start, but then I will leave the floor to you. First of all, starting with something that in the language is gender neutral is just to be inclusive, okay? Anyone can be the addressee of a sentence that is designed to be gender neutral. Another thing is to decide which kind of content you provide from a graphical perspective or a video perspective, okay? So that's where you can't be gender neutral, right? Because you have male, female, or also all the other genders that are out there and that people recognize themselves into, okay? So when you talk about language, then you have to be gender neutral because you don't want to exclude anyone. When you choose whether to use a male or a female image, then it's better for you to be balancing both. So you're not going to have just women because we are not we as women are not representative of the whole universe. And otherwise you are going to exclude the other half somehow, you know? And that's not what we are working toward to.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something? We have a contribution in week 3 of the MOOC that is the week 3 of the MOOC is intended to broaden the perspective. This contribution is about a topic that I know Francesca loves, is universal design for learning. It means that if we design in a gender conscious perspective and trying to include not just gender but the diversity as much as we can, we just created better educational content that speaks to everyone, and it means that everyone can be included and can feel like it's part of the field, can be included, and it's just a question of creating with a different perspective, and creating with this kind of perspective generally means creating a better and more inclusive educational content. I don't know if you agree, Marco, or please disagree if you want.
Yes, I agree, but yeah. So basically, you don't want to foster women, but you want to have inclusive for everybody.
We want, I think that one way being inclusive is also a way to foster women and to include them. It's not a way of including. I think it's more creating a sensitivity that does not exclude them a priori. That does. When I imagine a scientist, there is a test called Draw a Scientist test. It's quite famous. Maybe you know. I think that Roberta knows. And asking children to draw a scientist, they were a male or a female? A male. Why? Because we depict the reality as it is, maybe because there are more male scientists, I don't know, but it's when I think to a doctor, I imagine a man, but my personal doctor is a woman. But it's just not excluding a priori. It's that stop a moment and reflect, okay, maybe I can depict it a different way. I can create a different story that can be more inclusive. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and it's a path that I'm trying to develop as sensitivity, and I'm really far from having any solution or being an expert in diversity, because how can you be an expert of something like a sensitive topic. I don't know.
If I may add to this also, Marco, it's okay. If you look at the title of the MOOC, of course you expect us fostering women into STEM MOOCs because that's what we declare, okay? And through the MOOC, actually, that's what we try to do, to provide content and examples that show how to make STEM MOOCs more inclusive for women, because this is a specific field in which, as also Roberta just highlighted in the chat, there is a lack of recognition of the work that women are doing, or historically, actually, there is also a lack of history, a lack of testimonials, because they were hidden behind the male in front, who was declared as being the scientist who discovered something, etc., while behind him in history, it's proven that many times there were women, okay? Not all the time, and that's not what we are trying to convey as a message. But when it is, well, why not to recognize the work there? And I take the chance of Roberta's comment about Googling engineering and select images. Roberta, that's actually what we did in the first meeting we had in Valencia, kicking off the project, okay? I did it personally, and we've been looking at images of female scientists, and that's how we decided also within the project to contribute to public libraries through our scientists in our universities as partners, so that people can find real women working in the field somewhere. So whenever our researchers or our engineers or our scientists within the partnership agree, we always publish their images publicly so that they can be reused in this kind of projects. That's what we do. Roberta, if you want to talk, please just open your microphone.
No, I mean, I will just share my experience, 30 seconds. The thing is, I also believe it really depends on each and every one of us, how we feel about how much we want to foster. Personally, I've always been against quotas, like forever. I don't even want to think about that I got the job just because I am the least represented gender. And I do not expect quotas to be always in place and all the fields to be always 50-50, because I was at university, we were 2 girls in a class of 25 people. It's simply not realistic, okay? So this is maybe why, for example, in my opinion, I try to be the most neutral possible, using they rather than his or hers. In English, it's much easier than in Italian, because me as a person, I don't feel so okay in being called ingegnera rather than ingegnere. It's really not the way that, okay, it's not that important, but it again is a personal opinion. What I wanted to share is that like a couple of years ago, I was doing a different job. I wasn't in an N by that time, and I was visiting schools that were 7, 8 years old for the Day of Women in Science, Women and Girls in Science. And I was actually giving a presentation about my job at that time by saying, you know, girls do also this. And there were kids in that class who could ask me questions, and they were saying, but are you really sure? And this I'm quoting, are you really sure I can be a scientist? I am a girl. So this is what struck me, actually. For me, it's always, I think I've been super lucky at this time, because all the jobs I got, they were looking for M/F. Nobody cared about my gender, never. But I was quite surprised that in an international reality, okay, I was living in Geneva at that time, and I was giving these presentations in Geneva schools. And yet I got these questions, and it was not like 20 years back, you know, okay, I was at university 15, 18 years back, okay, maybe things are different now. But 3 years back, 8-year-old kid in an international reality. So I don't know, maybe I'm very optimistic. Maybe sometimes I have to be even more careful. I really try to understand what's the best way to, I try. I really go by success with that. I don't know if you have any other experience. For me, it was very surprising, to be honest, to face such a reality. I've always thought this is something that belongs to the past. So yeah, you have to represent, and yes, it's sometimes you have to push a bit without going for quotas, my opinion, without going for balance, because it's not a realistic representation of the reality. But please do share and let me know what you think.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and your ideas. And so I would like to check if there is some other question, or perhaps usually you can reflect on this topic, and if you have a question in the next days, during the next meetings, augmented CINCH meetings, we can, in the case, we can go on talking, and perhaps inviting Valeria and Paola if the discussion is so good and interesting. So thank you again for your participation. Thank you, Valeria and Paola, for introducing us in this topic. And I see now the occasion to invite both Paola and Valeria, if they want, perhaps with the next year, to talk to another topic very interesting. Paola earlier shown in a slide something that can have created a bit interest. She talked about open license, and so perhaps we can go deeper in the future with this topic. So have a nice day. Have a nice good lunch because it is time for me. Perhaps for the other time I don't know, but I think it is time for us to finish, to wrap up, and see you again. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Bye. Thanks
Thank you for having
again.
us. Bye.